They say gray hair is a sign of old age. But what if it were actually a symbol of power that someone doesn't want you to discover? Imagine that every white strand on your head isn't a failing of your body, but a hidden message from your soul, a silent code indicating that you're crossing an invisible threshold, a boundary that separates simple biological existence from true spiritual maturity. Hair has always been much more than aesthetics. Ancient cultures called it the threads of the soul, a bridge between the human and the divine. Shamans let it grow because they knew each strand was an antenna capable of capturing the invisible. Warriors feared having their hair cut because they felt it would lose strength. And wise men were recognized not by their youthful skin, but by the white glow of their gray hair. Yet the modern world has programmed us to hate it. The multi-billion-dollar hair dye industry has ensured that we associate white with old, with decay, with undesirability. We're told that gray hair is a defect, a sign that something is fading. But what if the opposite happens? And if every gray hair is a spark that ignites, a sign that something inside you is awakening? Science says they appear because melanin stops being produced in the follicle. But the ancients knew that when black turns to white, vital energy is no longer consumed externally, but begins to flow inward. Gray hair was proof that you had crossed an invisible portal, that you were ready to see reality without the veils of illusory youth. Think about this. Isn't it curious that the system pushes us to hide the very thing that connects us to the symbols of wisdom? That it makes us feel ashamed of what in the past was revered as a sign of spiritual power. Don't you find it strange that fortunes are invested in advertising, campaigns to cover up what was once considered sacred? In this chapter, we will reveal what we never knew. They told you about gray hair. First, we'll look at the biological phenomenon, but from an angle that conventional science will never explain. Then we'll decipher the ancient symbolism. Why was white hair a sign of divine connection in so many cultures? Then we'll reveal the modern manipulation that turned wisdom into shame. And finally, we'll look at the more hidden side, how each gray hair can be interpreted as an energetic code of the soul, a secret key that marks your initiation. And if you haven't yet done, subscribe, hit the bell, and stay until the end. Because when you finish this journey, you'll never look at your gray hair or anyone else's again. Similarly, gray hair, according to the official version, appears when cells called melanocytes stop producing melanin, the pigment that gives your hair its color. It's a phenomenon that science summarizes as oxidation, cellular stress, or genetic degeneration. In other words, the body ages, the hair loses color. End of explanation. But is it really that simple? Or rather, why in the hair itself? Why not in the skin, the eyes, the bones? Why did nature choose this highly visible symbol to show what happens in the invisible? Here begins the crack in the official narrative. Because even biology admits that gray hair doesn't appear the same in everyone. Some people go gray in their 20s, others never lose their color completely, even into their 90s. How can this be explained if the only factor is age? Ancient medicines, such as Taoist and Chinese medicine, offer another answer. For them, hair is an extension of blood and yin, the essential energy stored in the kidneys. When that energy weakens due to emotional exhaustion, sexual excess, or chronic fear, the first signs appear in the hair. It's not a failure. It's a warning, a kind of spiritual alarm that your body sounds to show you that something deep within you is changing. And here comes the disturbing part. If we follow that logic, gray hair isn't just oxidative stress, but also stress of the soul. Each white strand would be a testament to what your energetic field has experienced. A trace of experiences that not only age cells, but also deep memories. Think about it. How many times have you heard the phrase, "My hair turned white from being scared"? Science dismisses it as a myth, but testimonies abound. People who, after a trauma, grief, or shock, see their hair turn white overnight. Coincidence or proof that hair is a mirror of what vibrates deep within the being? The system calls it a genetic glitch, but perhaps it's the opposite, an activation signal. a message indicating that your body is no longer pouring all its energy into the surface, into appearance, but is beginning to direct it toward deeper levels. A shift in polarity from the outside in, from the material to the spiritual. And here arises the question that opens the next door. What then does white hair mean in ancient cultures? Because while today we cover it with dye, they revered it as a sign of power. What for us is a defect, for them was spiritual authority. And if what I've told you resonates with you up to this point, don't ignore it. This hidden knowledge isn't found in science books or TV commercials. You'll discover it here in this space. Subscribe now and click the bell, because every week we reveal secrets that the system needs to remain hidden. Stay until the end. What comes next will change the way you look at your gray hair forever. In the previous section, we discovered that what science calls a genetic error could actually be an energetic code. But the ancients already knew this, and that's why they never considered gray hair a defect. On the contrary, in ancient cultures, white hair was a sign of initiation, a silent symbol of spiritual power. Look at the representations of sages in almost any tradition. Celtic druids, the magicians of Norse myths, indigenous elders, and Amazonian shamans all appear with white hair and beards. Do you think it's a coincidence? It isn't. It was a way of showing that they had crossed an invisible threshold, that of experience, inner vision, connection with the subtle worlds. In the East, Taoist tradition saw gray hair as a sign of transformation of the yin. It wasn't decline, but rather a sign that vital energy was no longer preoccupied with sustaining the youthful body, but rather with opening deeper spiritual channels. White was not absence, but rather the fullness of light. In mystical Judaism, the Sochar describes God as a white-haired old man, the Ancient of Days, a symbol of eternal wisdom and purity. In Christianity, apocalyptic visions depict the Son of Man with woolly white hair, an image that alludes to authority and transcendence. And in Hinduism, the rishis, sages who reached elevated states of consciousness, were depicted with long white beards as visible proof of their connection to the divine. The indigenous peoples of the Americas also understood this. For the Mayans and Navajos, white-haired elders were guardians of collective memory. They weren't listened to just because of their years, but because their hair revealed that they had endured storms, grief, and visions, and had emerged from them with a different, even deeper vibration. In many traditions, white hair was seen as the color of ancestors. Each gray hair was like a thread that directly connected them to the spirits who had walked before you. It was a bridge between generations, a visible way to carry the memory of those who are no longer with us on your body. Contrast this with what happens today. We've gone from venerating whiteness as a sign of power to despising it as a loss of youth. What was once sacred is now hidden under layers of chemicals. And perhaps it's no coincidence. A world that idolizes superficiality can't allow the symbols of true wisdom to continue shining. Now imagine that every time you dye your hair, you're actually covering a single gray hair, or a sign that you're entering a different stage of consciousness, a bodily error, or a spiritual key that connects you to the eternal. And here the inevitable question arises: who benefits from hiding these signs? Who benefits from wisdom being mistaken for weakness? We've already seen how our ancestors revered white hair as a symbol of power and connection to the divine. But somewhere in history, something changed. What was once a symbol of respect has now become an aesthetic defect that must be covered at all costs. What happened during that transition? The answer lies in a multi-million-dollar business, the hair dye industry. The system was able to detect a deep fear in modern humans, the fear of aging, of losing value, of becoming invisible in a world that worships eternal youth. And on that fear, it built an empire. Every year, the global hair dye market moves billions. Chemicals are injected into the scalp to cover up what nature wants to reveal. And it's not just a matter of vanity, it's a mechanism of control. Because of people who disregard their signs of spiritual maturation are easier to manipulate. Ask yourself this: what would happen if gray hair continued to have the same prestige as it did in ancient times, young people would look upon their elders with respect, not condescension. Experience would be an asset, not a hindrance. The system would lose its profitable obsession with selling creams, surgeries, and hair dyes. And above all, it would lose the narrative that youth is the only thing that matters. The manipulation goes beyond aesthetics. It is cultural, psychological, and spiritual. The cult of eternal youth is not innocent. It's a way of breaking the transmission of power between generations. If they convince you that white hair is ugly, they'll have cut the thread that links you to the authority of your ancestors. If they manage to make you ashamed of what was once a sign of respect, they'll have tipped the balance. Now it's the young who dictate the pace, while the wise are relegated to silence. And most disturbingly, every time you hide a gray hair, you're not just hiding a symbol, but also an energetic process. Remember what we saw in the previous section. White isn't absence. It's light, it's memory, it's activation. Covering a gray hair is like turning off a signal your soul had turned on to tell you you're crossing over, you're entering another frequency. The eternal youth business has been so effective that we've come to associate white with the sick, the weak, the useless. Meanwhile, hair color ads flash with images of happy smiles, as if true triumph in life lies in erasing the traces of time. But time isn't erased. Time is honored. And white hair is perhaps the most visible symbol of that uncomfortable truth the system fears. That maturity brings a different strength, a broader vision, a deeper connection with the invisible. And here the core of the revelation appears. Whether gray hair is a symbol of spiritual wisdom and something more, a secret language of your own soul, a hidden code that only a few can decipher. In the previous section, we saw how the system turned gray hair into a defect that needed to be hidden. But what if I told you that beyond the cultural and aesthetic, each white strand can be interpreted as a spiritual code? The ancients sensed it. The body never does anything at random. Every symptom, every sign, every change has a hidden message. And white hair is no exception. It's as if the soul uses your own head as a canvas on which to draw its secret language. In many traditions, white is the color of enlightenment, of purity, of connection to higher planes. In alchemy, the whitening process, the albedo, is the second stage of the great work, where impure matter begins to refine and approach the divine. And if every gray hair were a reminder that your soul is undergoing that same transmutation, consider this. Hair grows from the root, from deep within the body. Every time a gray hair appears, it doesn't do so on the surface, but from within, as if an inner impulse were manifesting itself outward. It's not simply that the pigment is lost. It's that the vital energy changes polarity. What was once shadow now becomes visible light. Some mystics claim that gray hair is like activated antennas, capable of picking up more subtle vibrations. In fact, shamans and wise elders claimed to hear spirits better when their hair turned white. It was as if the silver fibers became direct cables to other dimensions. And there's something even more disturbing. Certain esoteric tales claim that the location of gray hair also matters. A white streak on the forehead is not the same as a streak on the crown. The forehead is associated with the third eye, intuition, and spiritual vision, while the crown is associated with the seventh chakra, a connection to the divine. Each gray hair, then, would not only be a sign of age, but an energetic map that reveals where your soul is opening channels. Imagine what that means. Your white hair like a secret cartography, a scripture the system never wanted you to learn to read. Because if you learned to read it, you would stop seeing old age as decline and start seeing it as ascension. You would stop running away from your gray hair and begin to understand it as sacred symbols. And here comes the final revelation. When we hide our gray hair, we're not just following a fashion. We're silencing the language of the soul. We're censoring the messages our energy sends us through the body. We're erasing a code that may have been put there to guide us in the transition from matter to spirit. White hair, then, isn't a mistake. It's a signature, a password, A reminder that your life isn't just a matter of years. It's a matter of the light your soul has accumulated. And here we come to the crucial point. Are you willing to continue hiding that code? Or has the time come to decipher it? If you've made it this far, you already know that gray hair isn't a mistake. It's a secret language of your soul. And if you want to continue deciphering these hidden codes, don't miss out. Subscribe now and hit the bell. Here, every week, we reveal what no one dares to say, because forbidden knowledge must not remain silent. Stay with me until the end, because the warning you're about to hear could change the way you look in the mirror forever. You've come this far. You've traveled with me on this journey from the biological explanation that reduces gray hair to a simple genetic flaw, to the ancestral symbolism that venerated it as a sign of power. We've seen how modern industry built an empire to convince you to hide it. And we've deciphered the most hidden side, gray hair as a secret code of the soul, a map of initiation that the body silently draws. And now you understand why the system needs you to hate them. Because every visible gray hair is a reminder that time is not your enemy, but your master. That your body doesn't fade away, it transforms. That true youth isn't in the color of your hair, but in the vibration of your spirit. Perhaps that's why the most ancient traditions associated white hair with the sacred. The shaman, the druid, the sage, the revered elder. They all displayed their whiteness like a banner. They didn't need to hide it because they knew it was a bridge, a symbol that they had crossed into another level of perception. But here's the warning. If you choose to play along with the system, every time you dye your gray hair, you won't just be covering up a hair. You'll be extinguishing a symbol. You'll be silencing the language your soul chose to mark you. You'll be surrendering a portal of wisdom that could guide you. So the next time you look in the mirror and see a strand of gray, don't curse it. Ask yourself, what is my body trying to tell me? What code is my soul activating right now? Because maybe that gray hair isn't a mistake, but a message. Remember what you saw today. Gray hair isn't the end, it's a beginning. They are the light that looms between the shadows. They are the signature of your ancestors on your own head. They are proof that even if the system wants to make you feel less, you are actually entering a realm where your vibration is rising. And here I leave you with an uncomfortable truth. The system can force you to hide your hair, but it can't erase what it means. The symbol will still be there, waiting for you to read it. So now the decision is yours. Will you continue to see them as a defeat, or will you start seeing them as an awakening? If this journey has resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because here we don't talk about what everyone repeats, but about what no one dares to say. Ring the bell and share this chapter with someone who needs to be reminded that their gray hair isn't a sign of weakness, but a portal. Because in the end, white hair isn't a reminder that you're aging, but proof that your soul is writing the brightest chapter of your life on your body. Until the next chapter.